We are going to start off with some of the basics of solving an equation. And there are just a few simple things that you can do to make this process very easy. You have actually done this a lot more than you probably think that you have. Just the ones that we've been accustomed to or been used to, you've been able to probably figure out just by looking at it. I'm going to give you a few steps in order to help you do this and make it a little more simpler. Uh, First thing is, when we do this, a lot of times the problems are going to be fairly simple, so there's not going to be a lot of combining to do. But as we start getting to more difficult problems, there's going to be a lot of combining our like terms together. So this boxing off part that we've done before becomes a lot more important. If you don't do the boxing off and you don't do the combining, the problems become a lot more difficult because there's a lot more to them. Whereas if you just combine some things together, it makes the problem a lot smaller. Our goal when we're solving equations is to always get the variable, which is the letter, by itself on one side. So for instance, we want it in the end to say x equals this because we know that then x would actually be what it says it is. If it's by itself,